Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. We're going to be tackling something I think a lot of you struggle with, that
Yeah.
feeling of just being completely overwhelmed, Like
Yeah.
you're juggling a million things at once and kind of dropping most of them.
Oh, yeah.
And we are diving into David Allen's Getting Things Done.
Okay.
And I have to say, prepping for this deep dive has already been kind of an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's fascinating about his work, I think, is that it's not just about like productivity hacks,
Right.
you know, like how to get more things done faster, but
Yeah.
it's really about achieving a state of mind
Okay.
that he calls mind like water,
Mhm.
where you're calm and present and ready to respond effectively to whatever comes your way.
Oh, that sounds amazing. But how do we actually get there? I mean,
Yeah.
we've all got like notes and to-do lists,
Yeah.
but sometimes it feels like those just add to the chaos.
That's where this idea of stuff comes in.
Yeah.
It's not just the tasks themselves, but like the mental energy that we waste trying to like manage all of these things.
Hmm.
All those unfinished projects, unanswered emails, that lingering feeling of, I need to do something about that.
Yeah.
Um, those create what he calls open loops.
Oh, so it's like having all these tabs open in your brain and like
Ah.
each one is demanding attention.
Exactly. They drain our energy, and it makes it impossible to focus
Right?
when you think about it.
Yeah.
When do you usually remember that you need new batteries for your flashlight?
Probably when it's dark and I actually need it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Our minds often remind us of things at the worst possible time,
Uh,
which just adds to our stress.
right?
His system is designed to get all that stuff out of our heads
Mm.
and into a system that we trust
Okay.
so we can finally relax and focus.
So it's not just about writing things down, it's
Um,
about processing them and actually deciding what to do with them.
Absolutely. And that is where these 5 stages of what he calls workflow mastery come in. Capture, process, organize, review, and do.
Right.
And each step is crucial for kind of breaking down that feeling of overwhelm and turning it into an actual clear plan of action.
Okay, so first up,
Capture.
capture. Yeah.
What is that?
It's all about gathering those open loops,
Right.
getting them out of your head and into a trusted system.
Mm.
And this could be a physical inbox, a digital note-taking app, or even just a simple piece of paper.
Okay.
The important thing is to have a consistent place where you capture everything that has your attention.
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that Alan says that most to-do lists
Yeah,
are actually just lists of stuff,
right.
not actionable plans.
That's right. He has this great analogy.
Right.
He compares trying to get organized while your inbox is overflowing to having like garbage cans that nobody ever empties.
Mm-hmm.
Until you process all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to keep piling up and creating stress.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So how do we move from that just like jumbled mess to like an actual plan? That's where the processing stage comes in.
Okay.
So that's where you actually look at each item that you've captured
Hmm.
and you ask yourself, what is this? Is it actionable?
Okay, so if it's not actionable,
Yeah.
what do you do with it?
He gives you a few different options.
Mhm.
So you can trash it, delegate it, defer it for later,
Mhm.
or just file it as reference material.
Okay.
The key is to actually make a conscious decision
Okay.
about what to do with each item so it's no longer an open loop draining your energy.
Got it. And if it is actionable,
If it is actionable, this is where the magic of next actions comes in.
okay.
So a next action is the very next physical, visible step you need to take to move that item forward.
Mm.
So instead of plan vacation,
Right.
your next action might be research flights to Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Instead of write report,
Yeah.
it might be outline key points.
Got it.
So it's really about breaking it down into that very next tangible step.
It's like having a roadmap instead of just like a vague destination in mind.
Exactly.
But I imagine figuring out those next actions
Yeah.
can be overwhelming at times.
It can be, especially when you're first starting out. But he has a brilliant little trick for those smaller tasks.
Okay.
It's called the 2-minute rule.
Hmm.
If a next action takes less than 2 minutes, do it now.
Oh.
You would be amazed at how much mental clutter you can clear
Yeah.
just by tackling those quick wins.
The 2-minute rule seems so simple, but it's brilliant because
Yeah.
it eliminates that mental energy
Yeah,
that we waste
totally.
debating whether or not to do something. It's like a mental shortcut to productivity.
Absolutely. And once you've processed all of your captured items,
Okay.
then it's time to move on to the organized stage.
All right, so bring on the list.
Yeah, bring on the
Yeah.
list. But we all have different ways of organizing
Yeah.
our to-dos. Right.
For sure.
And so Alan doesn't prescribe like a specific tool or method.
Okay.
The important thing is to find a system that works for you.
Hmm.
and that you will actually use consistently. So that could be a digital task manager, a physical notebook, a whiteboard, or even like a combination of different tools.
So it's not about finding the perfect app. It's about finding what fits your style.
Exactly.
Okay.
The key is to make it as frictionless as possible.
Hmm.
The easier it is to capture, process, and organize your stuff,
Yeah.
the more likely you are to stick with the system.
This is already making me rethink my own messy system.
Yeah.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
how do we know which tasks to prioritize
Hmm.
when we've got so many things on our plate?
That's where the idea of context-specific lists comes in.
Okay.
So instead of having like one giant to-do list that feels super overwhelming,
Right.
you create separate lists based on where you are and what tools you have available.
That's interesting. So instead of just like call mom, it would be call mom errands.
Yes,
I need to
precisely.
be out and about anyway.
Having context-specific lists like
Okay.
at computer, phone calls, errands, and so on, allows you to see at a glance what you can realistically accomplish in your current situation.
Right.
It eliminates decision fatigue
Okay.
and helps you stay focused.
I can already see how that would be a game changer.
It is.
But even with a great system,
Yeah.
I imagine things can still slip through the cracks.
They can, and that's why the review stage is so crucial.
Okay.
So he recommends doing a weekly review where you go through your lists, your calendar, and any other relevant materials to make sure everything's up to date and that nothing is falling through the cracks.
So the weekly review is like hitting that mental reset button.
Yeah,
It's time to step back, gain perspective, and make sure you're on track with all your commitments.
exactly.
But I have to admit, I'm not always the best
Yeah.
at sticking to like a weekly review schedule.
Yeah.
So what about those of us who are maybe a little less disciplined?
He actually has a great tip for that.
Okay.
He suggests doing your weekly review the week before you go on vacation.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah.
But it makes so much sense. People naturally do a mental clean sweep before a trip.
Exactly.
So why not leverage that natural tendency?
It's about working with your natural rhythms,
Right.
not against them.
Totally. Okay. But even with a clear plan,
Yeah.
there are still those moments when we have to make decisions
Right.
about what to do right now.
Absolutely.
Right. Like when you're staring at a to-do list a mile long
Yes.
and you're not sure where to even start.
Yes. And he actually provides two models
Okay.
to help us make those choices. The 4 criteria model and the threefold model for evaluating daily work.
Okay.
They basically provide frameworks
Okay.
to help us make more conscious and intentional choices
Yeah.
about how we spend our time and energy.
All right. Let's dive into those models.
Okay.
What are the 4 criteria we should be considering
Yeah.
when we are choosing actions in the moment?
So the 4 criteria are context, time available, energy available, and priority. So think of it this way. Even if you have a prioritized list,
Okay.
if you only have 15 minutes
Right.
and it's a phone call that needs your full attention for an hour,
Yeah.
it's probably not the best choice for right now,
Right.
you know?
Makes sense.
So it's about being realistic about your limitations and making the most of the resources you have available in any given moment.
So it's about being realistic about our limitations
Yeah,
and making the most of the resources we have available
exactly.
in a given moment.
And this model isn't about ignoring your intuition.
Okay.
It's about informing it.
Okay.
You still get to make the final call, but now you're doing it with more awareness
Right.
of the factors that are actually involved.
Okay. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
But how do we balance those like moment-to-moment decisions
Yeah.
with the bigger picture?
Hmm.
Like our long-term goals and things we really want to accomplish.
That's where the threefold model comes in,
Okay.
and it helps us balance predefined
Okay.
work as it shows up. And most importantly, time for defining your work.
What do you mean by defining your work?
It's about taking the time to reflect on your goals, your values, and the projects that really matter to you. This is where you connect your daily actions to your bigger vision for your life.
So it's like stepping back to make sure you're climbing the right ladder.
I guess.
It's not just climbing efficiently.
Yeah.
But I imagine that can feel kind of daunting,
It can.
especially when we're already struggling to keep up with the day-to-day.
It can be, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And he provides this really powerful tool for tackling those bigger projects.
Okay.
It's called the natural planning model.
Okay.
And it helps us break down these complex projects into smaller, more manageable steps, using a process that actually taps into how our brains naturally plan anyway.
All right, let's hear more about this natural planning model.
Yeah.
How does it actually work?
Well, think about a time when you Plan something as simple as a dinner party. You probably went through several distinct phases without even realizing it.
Hmm.
You defined your purpose.
Yeah.
Why are you hosting? You envisioned the outcome, like a successful evening with friends.
Right.
You brainstormed ideas, menu, guest list,
Mhm.
decorations. You kind of organized those ideas.
Yeah.
And then finally, you identified the next actions to make it all happen.
I can see how that approach would be helpful for tackling
Yeah,
bigger, more complex projects that just can feel overwhelming at first.
totally.
Like breaking down a marathon into like manageable miles.
Exactly. And the natural planning model isn't about creating like a rigid, overly formal plan.
Okay.
It's really about leveraging your natural thought processes
Yeah.
to make progress on your goals.
This is all starting to sound a lot less overwhelming
Good.
and a lot more empowering.
Yeah.
But I am curious about one more thing.
Yeah.
What about all those notes, research, and resources that often come with these bigger projects?
Yeah.
Where does all that stuff go?
That's where project support materials come in.
Hmm.
And he stresses the importance of having a well-organized system
Hmm.
for storing all those related documents, notes, and resources.
So whether it's physical files, digital folders, or a combination of both,
Yeah,
the key is to just have everything readily accessible.
precisely.
Huh?
And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
A simple filing system, even something as basic as like labeled folders,
Yeah.
can make a huge difference in reducing your stress and staying organized.
You know what? I actually find filing kind of fun
Oh, it's great.
when I think about how much easier it's going to make things down the road.
Yes.
It's like creating a library of resources
Yes.
for your future self.
I love that. And that brings us back to the core
Okay.
of what getting things done is all about.
Hmm.
It's about shifting from a state of overwhelm and reactivity to a state of calm, clarity, and control.
So it's not just about getting more done. It's
Right.
about feeling more at peace with the process.
Exactly.
Okay.
By mastering your workflow, you free up mental space and energy to focus on what really matters.
This has been so insightful already.
Good.
I'm starting to see how all the pieces of his system fit together
Yeah.
to create a more peaceful and productive way of working and living.
It's a really transformative approach,
Yeah.
and we've only just scratched the surface.
Okay, so we covered a lot of ground already,
Yeah.
from capturing those pesky open loops
Mm-hmm.
to like organizing them into context-specific lists.
Yes.
But this wouldn't be a true deep dive
Right.
if we didn't explore kind of the nuances, right?
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful
Yeah.
but often overlooked aspects of his system
Okay.
is this idea that it's not just about doing,
Mhm.
it's also about being.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
I thought this was all about productivity and
Yeah.
getting things off our plates.
It is, but he argues that like true productivity
Okay.
comes from a place of clarity and intention.
Okay.
So by getting all those commitments out of your head
Right.
and into a system that you trust,
Yeah.
you free up mental space and energy to focus on the things that really matter.
So it's like clearing the mental clutter
Yeah,
so you can actually see what's important.
exactly. And that's where this distinction between horizontal and vertical thinking comes in.
Okay.
So horizontal thinking is about managing all those day-to-day tasks and commitments, keeping the plates spinning, so to speak.
Right.
But vertical thinking is about going deeper,
Okay.
exploring those bigger questions about purpose, vision, and values.
Oh, it's like zooming out to see the whole forest instead of getting lost in the trees, as they say.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And his system is designed to support both types of thinking.
Oh.
It helps you manage the day-to-day
Right.
while also providing the space for reflection and alignment with those like bigger goals.
That makes so much sense. But
Yeah.
I have to admit, I sometimes get so caught up in the doing
Huh?
that I forget to make time for the being.
You're not alone. It's easy to get swept up in the whirlwind of daily life. But remember, this system is a tool to serve you, not the other way around.
Right.
If it's not helping you create the kind of life you want, then it's time to adjust it.
That's a really empowering way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the theoretical underpinnings of
Yeah.
getting things done, but I know some listeners are probably wondering, where do I even start?
That's a great question. And I think the best advice is to start small.
Okay.
Don't try to implement the entire system overnight.
Right.
Pick one thing that resonates with you,
Okay.
whether it's the 2-minute rule, the idea of next actions,
Uh-huh.
or setting up a simple capture system.
Yeah, trying to do everything at once can feel pretty overwhelming,
It can.
even when you're learning a system that's supposed to help with overwhelm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
right.
It's about making gradual progress and finding what works for you.
Okay.
He actually suggests starting with the capture phase,
Okay.
which is all about gathering all those open loops.
Okay, so let's talk about how to actually do that.
Yeah.
What are some practical tips for capturing those open loops?
Think of it as like a mental decluttering exercise.
Mm.
Go through your physical space, your desk, your office, your home, and gather anything
Okay.
that has your attention, anything that represents something you need to do
Mm.
or decide on.
So it could be as simple as like a business card,
Yeah.
a sticky note,
Right.
or even just a random thought that keeps popping into your head.
Exactly. It's about getting it all out of your head
Yeah.
and into a trusted system.
Okay.
And don't forget about the digital realm.
Right.
Emails, voicemails, text messages, social media notifications.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Those can be open loops too.
Oh, my email inbox is a black hole of forgotten tasks
Yeah.
and unanswered messages.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
And that's why having a consistent capture system,
Okay.
whether it's a physical inbox or a digital note-taking app,
Mm-hmm.
is so crucial.
Mm.
Once you've captured everything, then you can start the process of deciding what to do with it.
Right, that's where the processing stage comes in.
Yes.
We talked about it earlier, but let's break it down a bit more.
Okay.
How do we actually decide what to do with all the stuff that we've captured?
The key question to ask yourself for each item is, what's the next action?
Okay.
What's the very next physical, visible step you need to take to move this item forward?
So if it's an email,
Yeah.
the next action might be reply to email,
Yeah.
or if it's a bill, it might be pay bill.
Precisely. And if it's something that doesn't require action,
Okay,
like a reference document,
right.
then the next action might be file it away.
Okay,
The important thing is to make a conscious decision
okay.
about what to do with each item so it's no longer an open loop taking up space in your mind.
This is where I think a lot of people get stuck, right?
Yeah.
They know they need to do something,
Yeah.
but they haven't clarified what that something is.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And that's why the concept of next actions is so powerful.
Mm.
It forces us to move from vague intentions to concrete steps
Right.
that we can actually take.
And if the next action takes less than 2 minutes,
Yes.
do it now, thanks to the 2-minute rule, right?
Exactly. The 2-minute rule is a game changer when it comes to clearing those small, nagging tasks
Right.
that can really clutter our minds.
Yes.
But what about the tasks that take longer than 2 minutes
Yeah.
or that can't be done right away?
Mm.
That's where the organized stage comes in.
All right, let's talk about how to organize all those next actions.
Yeah.
This is where things can start to feel a bit overwhelming again, right?
It can.
Yeah.
But remember, the goal is to create a system that works for you.
Hmm.
He doesn't prescribe a one-size-fits-all method.
Okay.
He encourages people to experiment and find what fits their style.
So some people might prefer like a digital task manager,
Yes.
while others might be more comfortable with a physical notebook.
Exactly. And there are pros and cons to each approach.
Right.
Digital tools can be great for managing complex projects and collaborating with others,
Yeah.
while physical notebooks can be more tactile and satisfying to use.
Mm.
It's really about personal preference.
What about those of us who are somewhere in between?
Yeah.
I tend to use a combination of digital and physical tools,
Yeah.
and sometimes it feels like I'm juggling too many systems.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And the key is to find a way to integrate your systems
Mm.
so that they work together seamlessly.
Okay.
For example, you might use a digital task manager for work-related tasks
Right.
and a physical notebook for personal to-dos.
That's a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
But even with a well-organized system, I imagine it can still be difficult to decide
Yeah.
which tasks to prioritize when you've got a lot on your plate.
That's where context-specific lists come in again.
Right.
So instead of having one giant to-do list, you create separate lists
Okay.
based on where you are and what resources you have available.
We talked about this earlier, but I think it's worth reiterating because it's such a key part of the system.
Absolutely.
It's about matching the task to the context, right?
Exactly. If you're at your computer, you can tackle tasks that require internet access or specific software.
Right.
If you're running errands, you can make phone calls or listen to podcasts.
Uh-huh.
And if you're at home, you can focus on tasks that require more quiet and concentration.
I can see how that would help eliminate decision fatigue
Yes.
and just make it easier to get started on something.
Absolutely.
But what about those times when your context is constantly changing? For example, I often work from different locations
Right.
throughout the day.
That's a great question. And in those cases, you might want to create like a more general anytime list
Okay.
for tasks that can be done regardless of location.
Right.
Or you could use a digital task manager that allows you to tag tasks by context and easily filter them based on your current situation.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think the key takeaway here is that the system needs to be flexible enough to adapt to your own individual needs and circumstances.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's no right or wrong way to do it as long as it's working for you.
Right.
And don't forget about the importance of the weekly review.
Right, the weekly review.
Yes.
That's where we hit the mental reset button and make sure everything is up to date.
Yes.
But I have to confess,
Yeah.
I often struggle to make time for it.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
The weekly review doesn't have to be a huge, time-consuming ordeal.
Right.
Even just like 15, 20 minutes
Okay.
can make a big difference.
Right.
And remember his tip about doing it before vacation?
Oh, yeah, that's a great strategy. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
But even with a regular weekly review,
Yeah.
I imagine there are still times when things slip through the cracks.
Uh-huh.
What about those unexpected tasks that pop up and throw off our carefully crafted plans?
That's where the threefold model for evaluating daily work comes in. And it reminds us that we need to balance predefined work with work that shows up unexpectedly.
Right.
And it also encourages us to make time for defining our work.
We talked about defining our work earlier,
Yeah.
but can you elaborate on that a bit more?
It's about taking the time to reflect on our goals, our values,
Okay.
and the projects that truly matter to us. It's about making sure that our daily actions are aligned with our bigger vision
Right.
for our lives.
So it's not just about clearing the decks, it's about
Yeah.
building something meaningful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where his natural planning model can be so helpful.
Okay.
It helps us break down those bigger, more ambitious projects
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
We touched on the natural planning model earlier,
Yeah.
but let's dive a little deeper.
Okay.
How can listeners actually use this model to tackle those more complex projects?
Remember that dinner party example we talked about?
Yes.
The natural planning model takes us through those same phases. We start by defining the purpose.
Right.
Why are we doing this? Then we move to envisioning the outcome.
Okay.
What would success look like?
So it's about starting with the big picture,
Yeah.
the why behind the project, before getting bogged down in the details.
Once you have a clear purpose and vision,
Okay.
then you can move on to brainstorming ideas.
Right.
This is where you let your creativity flow
Yeah.
and generate as many possibilities as you can.
I love the emphasis on brainstorming.
It's fun.
It's like giving yourself permission to think outside the box
Yeah.
and explore different approaches.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And once you've generated a bunch of ideas,
Mm.
you can start organizing them into a structure that makes sense.
Right.
This could involve creating a mind map,
Okay.
an outline, or even just a simple list.
So it's not about coming up with the perfect plan right away,
Right.
but it's about letting the ideas flow
Yeah.
and then shaping them into something actionable.
Precisely. And once you have a structure in place,
Yeah.
okay, you can identify those all-important next actions.
Okay.
Remember, a next action is the very next physical, visible step
Right.
you need to take to move the project forward.
I can see how this approach would be really helpful for tackling those big
Yes.
and sometimes intimidating projects.
Totally.
It's about breaking them down into smaller, more manageable steps,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Exactly. And the natural planning model isn't just for work projects.
Yeah.
You can use it for anything,
Hmm.
from planning a vacation to writing a book to starting a new hobby.
That's a great point. It's about applying these principles
Yeah.
to all areas of our lives.
All areas of our lives, exactly.
Well, what about all the notes, research, and resources that often come with these bigger projects?
Yeah.
Where does all that stuff go?
That's where project support materials come in.
Okay.
And he stresses the importance of having a well-organized system for storing all those related documents, notes, and resources.
So whether it's physical files, digital folders, or a combination of both, the key is to have everything readily accessible.
Precisely. And this doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
A simple filing system, even something as basic as labeled folders,
Right.
can make a huge difference in reducing stress and staying organized.
I think a lot of people underestimate the power of a good filing system.
They do.
It's like having a well-stocked toolbox for each project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the easier it is to find the information you need,
Right.
the more likely you are to actually use it.
Right.
But remember, a system is only as good as the person using it.
Right. It's not about the tools themselves.
Well,
It's about the principles behind them.
precisely. And getting things done is more than just like a set of techniques. It's really a way of thinking about and managing your life.
It's about creating a system
Yeah,
that supports your values, your goals, and your vision for the future.
exactly. And by mastering your workflow, you free up mental space and energy to focus on what truly matters, living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It's not just about getting more done.
Right.
It's about creating a life
Yes.
that feels more aligned and intentional.
Absolutely.
Huh.
And that's what he calls mind like water, that state of being where you're calm, present, and ready to respond effectively to whatever life throws your way.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's about being flexible, adaptable, and able to flow with the current.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate goal of getting things done. To create a life where you're not constantly feeling overwhelmed and reactive,
Right.
but rather calm, in control, and truly present.
Wow. You know, this deep dive into getting things done has really shifted my perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just about like productivity hacks.
Right.
It's really a whole philosophy for how to approach work and life.
It is, and one of the most valuable takeaways is that
Yeah.
it's a system that's designed to serve you.
Mhm.
It's not about like achieving some arbitrary standard of perfection.
Right.
It's about creating a way of working
Yeah.
that supports your values and goals.
It's not about becoming some hyper-efficient robot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about finding a way to work and live that feels more aligned
Yeah,
and intentional.
exactly. And a lot of people get caught up in trying to do everything right according to the system. But
Yeah.
the beauty of it is that it's meant to be adapted and personalized.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not about following a rigid set of rules.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you and your unique style.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that might mean using a combination of digital and physical tools,
Right.
or it might mean focusing on certain aspects of the system
Yeah.
that resonate more with you.
I think that's where the power of experimentation comes in,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's about trying different things and seeing what feels right.
It is.
This whole conversation has really made me realize that
Yeah.
getting things done is more than just a productivity system.
Right.
It's a framework for creating a more peaceful and fulfilling life.
I couldn't agree more. It's about freeing up that mental space and energy
Yeah.
so you can actually focus on the things that truly matter.
And sometimes the most productive thing you can do is step away from the to-do list and just be present.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between doing and being.
Yeah.
And he actually talks about that in his later work. He emphasizes the importance of horizontal thinking,
Right.
which is about managing all those day-to-day tasks.
Yeah.
And vertical thinking, which is about going deeper, exploring those bigger questions about
yes.
purpose and meaning.
It's like finding that sweet spot
Yeah,
between effectiveness and intention.
precisely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Mind Like Water is all about.
Yeah.
Being able to kind of flow effortlessly
Right.
between those different modes of thinking and being.
This has been such a rich and insightful conversation.
It has.
I know I'm walking away with a lot to think about
Yeah,
and experiment with.
me too.
So for our listeners who are ready to take that next step,
Yeah.
where would you suggest they start?
I would say pick one thing that resonates with you,
Okay.
whether it's the 2-minute rule, the idea of next actions, or setting up a simple capture system. And just start experimenting.
Okay.
See what works for you
Right.
and adapt it to fit your own unique style.
Great advice. And remember, this deep dive was really just a taste
Yeah.
of the depth and richness of getting things done.
Right.
We encourage you to explore his work further
Absolutely.
and see how it can help you achieve that state of mind like water.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is, and as always, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of ideas that matter. But before we go, here's one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about managing our actions, but what about managing our inaction? Those moments of rest, reflection, and just simply being. It's something to consider as you navigate this world of constant doing. Until next time.